Zach Polanski and Reform's Andrea Jenkyns appeared on the Jeremy Vine show, and they sparred over the Russia controversy, although Jenkyns mounted quite a weak defence.
Do you think your party's too close to Russia?
Oh no, how ridiculous. This is where the left just keep pushing that out, isn't it?
Well, no, I just saw that guy, was it Nathan Gill, went to prison.
No, but there's always one bad egg in whatever party,
spying,
isn't there? It's disgusting,
Yeah.
But there's a bad egg in every party, isn't there?
Well, I don't know.
See, I don't think it's the courts that are pushing it out. I think it's reality that's pushing it out. Nathan Gill went to prison for 10.5 years. I think 7 or 8 other people are implicated who are involved with, as it was known, UKIP at that time, of the Brexit Party.
No, but Nigel and, none of us are involved with Russia. And also, let's face it, the left, people like yourself, who was a big Remainer, Zach, have been putting these conspiracy theories out during Brexit, during, on the rise of reform. You always try to align anybody who's not your views with Russia. It's getting a bit tiresome.
Go on. You say what the evidence is.
I don't think it's conspiracy theories. So we've got evidence now that this happened. In fact, Nathan Gill, this wasn't a random person. He was the leader of the Brexit Party in Wales. And Nigel Farage for a while said he didn't really know who he was. But on the day of Brexit, there's a picture where Nigel Farage is there, and right over his shoulder is Nathan Gill. And when I asked Zia Youssef about this, he kind of said, Nigel Farage didn't really know him. He meets lots of people. He was the leader of reform in Wales. That's not...
Well, do you know every party member?
I know the leader of the Wales Green Party.
Come on, Andrew, he's the leader of Welsh Reform. We obviously knew him. He didn't know he was spying.
No, but of course... but none of us know. I mean, you could be a spy, for God's sake.
I agree that none of us know, but when there's 8 people, it starts to look a little bit suspicious.
What rubbish.
Or is there
I'm
just
really sick of this. Right since the Brexit years, all anybody ever does, if you've got a different view to the BBC, etc., or mainstream media, you get as if you're aligned to Putin.
Well,
Putin's vile.
Well,
Putin really wanted to break down Europe as well. We've got a weakened European Union now, and that plays into Putin's hands. And
we've got a Green Party leader who's also into conspiracy theories.
I don't think it's conspiracy theory at all to say that Putin is not a fan of the European Union. No, but I'm saying
aligning reform with that.
But he went to prison for 10.5 years.
Yeah,
that's not me. That's what actually happened.
One person.
But there are other
Are you trying to say that I'm aligned to Putin?
No, not at all. I have no idea what you think about Putin. But I do know there are other people in your party who are implicated. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just fact.
But the fact is... We're a big party. We are the biggest party in the UK now. You're going to get some bad eggs. You wait. You'll find some bad eggs coming out of the woodwork.
I expected Jenkyns to do better than that. I mean, not because she's particularly an astute politician, but that response was utterly weak. I mean, look, I think there's a difference between, a random member of a party and the former Welsh leader. I mean, Zach is also right. It's not just Nathan Gill. It's 8 other people who are possibly involved. I mean, it's clear Reform has a Russia problem. And also, what is she talking about when she says the left are pushing this conspiracy theory? I mean, I find that odd since, to be honest, the left, talks way more about other issues than Russia. It talks about Israel more. I find that liberals are the ones who make everything about Russia. Liberals are the ones who say Brexit happened because of Russia. Trump happened because of Russia. The political establishment failed and people voted for change, whether that be through Brexit or Donald Trump. We actually have a material analysis for these things as opposed to Russia, Russia, Russia. But the media have a big problem too. They will be happy to talk about the Russian links as a problem, as they should. Yet money and doing the bidding of Israel, utter silence. Labour, Reform and the Tories will happily support Israel. Both Labour and the Conservatives have literal lobby groups supporting the state, yet the media won't talk about any of that. I mean, how many times have you seen a pundit grill an MP on their Israel donations or taking trips over there? Never. Now, Zach has brought up the fact that the government has increased its trade with Israel. So whilst the media are happy to jump on the Reform Russia story, they won't ask these sorts of questions of any Labour or Conservative MP. Helena, do you think the Russian story is sticking and affecting Reform support?
I really do think that it is. It seems to be one of the biggest unifying positions in British politics, is this idea that we are worried about the influence of Russia, both broadly in our politics, but in terms of the impact that it has on us geopolitically, especially with regards to how it's affected our relationship with Europe and the perceived collusion between Russia and the Trump administration, and that relationship then being kind of passed on across to Reform UK, where we're also seeing members of their party either directly implicated in Russian collusion when it comes to Nathan Gill, or at the very least tangentially implicated, so much so that there's more investigations ongoing. And this is the same guy who said that he admired Vladimir Putin all those years ago. And for Andrew Jenkyns to say that it's a conspiracy theory that Russia got itself involved in the Brexit referendum, this is true. We know that they had this stuff going on at the time because they were engaging in very similar kinds of psyops in Ukraine between 2014 and 2022 during the kind of proxy war that was going on in eastern Ukraine at the time. And wanting to break the UK off from a united Europe was in the interests of Russia, so they have a less united front against them when they're trying to push, if they try and push westwards, which we've seen that they're now happy to do so. Obviously, they were pushing south into Georgia for quite a while, but this move into Ukraine is definitely a new phase of their kind of expansionary imperialist policy. And when it comes to Europe, them being less united is good for Russian politics and trying to bring people into their sphere of influence, which is the same is true of the United States as well, who know that in search of more broader corporate power, the EU is a bulwark against that in some respects. It's not a total bulwark because they do still believe in lots of free trade and pro-business propositions, but in terms of corporate hegemony, there are at least some guardrails that the EU has that the US doesn't have in terms of things like antitrust and their pretty aggressive regulation of monopolies, which the US doesn't like. And as we can see from Trump, he gets mad at EU protecting consumers and wants to override that by using trade belligerence. So there's a real act where you see the people on, especially the far right, actually don't have a patriotic mindset, are actually against the interests of this country because they're serving bigger masters elsewhere. And people will see that not only as being against their own personal interest in terms of what their politics is, but also it shows that these people are charlatans in the ways in which that their rhetoric about what they believe for the country is totally at odds with their actions in terms of being in hoc to powers overseas.
I mean, I personally think, and you probably agree, you might disagree, but I think that had we hadn't had decades of austerity, for example, had the political establishment not failed, we wouldn't have had Trump or Brexit. And I think the Liberals are quite quick to say it was all down to Russia. They absolutely play a part. I just thought it was very odd that Andrea Jenkyns was saying the left will push into conspiracy, but I suppose that's just a broader trend of the right wing sort of merging liberals and the left as one and the same when we're very, very different.
It is worth specifically pointing out that there is two sides to this. In one side, there's the right who say it's a total conspiracy. There's no evidence at all that there was collusion between Russia and Brexit or Russia and Trump in the form of what happened in 2016 in both the US presidential election and in the Brexit referendum. And there's the liberals who go, we are totally blameless. There's nothing wrong here. Our politics is perfect, and the only reason we lost at this referendum and this election was because of Vladimir Putin. When the reality is neither of those things. The reality is the failures of Obama and the failures of David Cameron led to Brexit and Trump. The failures of liberalism more broadly to not deal with the underlying problems that led to the financial crisis in the first place and the negative externalities that came from that. But was there Russian collusion? Well, we know there was Russian collusion. We know about things like Cambridge Analytica. We know about what's happening with Paul Manafort meeting with two Russian oligarchs, specifically whilst he was managing the Trump campaign. This is Deripaska and Kilimnik, and they even had discussions about the future of Ukraine within those talks as well. Was that enough to sway the election? Well, I probably don't think that it was, neither in the case of Brexit or in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton was a shit candidate who didn't have anything other than praise for the failed paradigm that led up to the financial crisis that caused the breakdown in American society. And of course, she bought into the neoliberal rhetoric that led to the destruction of manufacturing communities in Detroit, Michigan, or whatever. Those are all problems, and she didn't solve them because she was on the side of the corporations and the banks, just like everybody else was. But that doesn't mean that the Russian collusion didn't happen. It's just not the unique factor that caused these things to be lost, rather than just a broader point about everything that led up to those points as well.